And I'm calling for Munir Nusseibeh to talk about eradicating journalists, systematic attacks on journalists in Gaza as a genocidal strategy. Mr. Nusseibeh, please.
Good afternoon, everyone, distinguished jury of conscience. A long-standing principle of international humanitarian law holds that journalists and their equipment are to be regarded as civilians and civilian objects, respectively, and therefore enjoy protected status, provided that they do not take direct part in hostilities. Their observant role through the dangers of war is very vital. Journalists serve as witnesses and interpreters, providing the indispensable conduit through which the ravage of war reach the world's consciousness. In Gaza, Israel has for long controlled entry and movement of foreign journalists, requiring that they embed on tightly supervised military tours, if allowed, and has frequently denied visas, revoked permits, or effectively exhausted international press entirely during major offensives, thereby institutionalizing a mechanism of information blackout, a mechanism that is integral to the Israeli genocidal machinery in Gaza. The near-total prohibition of independent international media access to the enclave is one of the most distinctive and rare features of the Gaza genocide. While limitations on media are common in armed conflict, the outright barring of foreign press during sustained bombardment is exceptional. By preventing and obstructing external observers, Israel ensures that genocidal acts of mass killings and systematic destruction of infrastructure essential for civilian survival occur largely unseen. These dead zones of reporting allow Israel to commit atrocities with minimal immediate scrutiny. The logic is simple. The fewer outside eyes, the greater the leeway to conduct large-scale atrocities and pursue genocidal objectives. Accordingly, the denial of unrestricted press to Gaza constitutes a foundational factor in Israeli strategy of genocide. Consequently, the only journalists able to report from Gaza are Palestinian journalists operating under constant existential threat and severe operational constraints. Their systematic targeting constitutes a deliberate genocidal tactic, precisely because they are the sole witnesses and chronicles of events on the ground. The elimination and silencing of these journalists is institutional to the execution of the campaign's objectives. Is instrumental, to the execution of the campaign's objectives. In other words, an attempt to conceal the genocide. Crucially, when journalists are targeted, the international community is deprived of timely, accurate information, undermining its ability to assess, respond to, and prevent ongoing genocide. This obstruction directly implicates states' responsibilities under the Genocide Convention, which obligates state parties to take proactive measures to prevent genocide. The numbers merit stark emphasis. Gaza has become the deadliest place on earth for journalists in modern history by orders of magnitude. The time of the most recent ceasefire by the time of the most recent ceasefire, more than 248 journalists had been killed in Gaza since October 2023, of whom at least 56 were directly targeted or killed by virtue of their work, reportedly. Many media offices, broadcasting facilities, communication nodes, and journalistic equipment were also destroyed or degraded. According to the Palestinian Journalists Syndicate, 535 journalists were injured, 49 detained, and 150 media institutions destroyed. Family members of journalists have been highly affected, as hundreds of them have been murdered or injured. Comparative observation highlights that the exceptional character. Journalist fatalities in Gaza, just in a few months, what took Israel to murder in a few months in Gaza, what happened in decades elsewhere in the world. It's the deadliest and most deliberate effort to kill and silence journalists ever documented. In historical conflict, World War II saw 68 journalists killed. In Vietnam, around 65 over a span of decades. Gaza death toll alone in less than 2 years surpasses all of these totals. Far from being incidental, the killings and targeting show hallmarks of consistent pattern. Strikes on marked vehicles or buildings, penetrating journalist shelters and medical tents, multiple journalists killed in a single strike, and the targeting of media infrastructures. The targeting and killing of veteran journalists and of journalists wearing clearly marked press gear in particular appear to form a part of a recurring pattern that supports the inference of deliberate targeting as a policy. Now, in order to look at this policy from the legal point of view, of course, it is very easy to characterize it as part of a number of war crimes and crimes against humanity because it is indeed widespread and systematic. However, within the context of the Gaza Strip, it's very important to also note that this targeting of journalists is part of the wider genocidal intent that Israel has been committing. And this has a number of factors that should be mentioned here. On the one hand, by doing that, Israel is concealing evidence and external scrutiny, because journalists document, verify, and testify. When they are killed, detained, or forced underground, the capacity of the international community, NGOs, victims, and courts to monitor atrocities is severely weakened. Without independent reporting, much of the violence proceeds unrecorded or unaccounted for. Controlling the narrative and enabling denial. Silencing journalists allows the perpetrator to dominate public discourse, frame attacks as legitimate, deny casualties, and portray destruction as inevitable. This destructive control helps suppress moral outrage, mobilize domestic support, and delay deflect international legal pressure. In genocide, denial is often recognized as the final stage. By diminishing, making, or reinterpreting atrocity, the perpetrator seeks to erase the memory and avoid accountability. The information blackout in Gaza functions precisely to facilitate such denial. Inducing fear and chilling reporting. Repeated targeted killing of journalists deter others from reporting, creating playable fear. This reduces investigative coverage, diminishes the pool of reporters, and pushes others to self-censorship. In a genocidal design, reducing the space of counter-witnesses is tactical. Finally, contributing to conditions of life harm. Under Article 11C of the Genocide Convention, deliberately inflicting conditions of life calculated to bring about destruction in whole or in part is prescribed. Obstruction of humanitarian aid, siege, starvation, forced displacement, these are often considered within that clause. The silencing of journalists is highly likely to augment the harm by impeding information about urgent needs, for example, famine or disease, thereby facilitating neglect or forced suffering and multiplying the destructive conditions. If all of this is not enough, Israeli officials have reportedly stated that information blackouts leave Palestinians in fear and anxiety, as isolation is part of Israel's psychological warfare. Sorry? Okay. Thank you very much.
So, as of the members of the jury, do we have any questions for the topic about journalists and their lives in Gaza?
Again, very quickly, so that we can distinguish Gaza from other conflicts, I looked this up. It would be nice to have it in a table form and to add it to the body of evidence. In World War II, over 6 years, there were 69 journalists killed. In Vietnam, over 10 years, 63. In Ukraine, which is 18 months more than Gaza, 17. And in Gaza, 274, how much?
48, 248, but there is a more recent number from the Syndicate of Journalists, 252.
So you could see that even if you combine all the journalists killed in all these wars, Gaza is 3 times as much. I think it's very nice, it's very important that we highlight this and to show the discrepancy and also how the world is not showing the same outrage that they have shown with, for instance, Ukraine.
Indeed, I will provide that table for you. Thank you.